Welcome to the Rest of Us podcast. We are so excited to have a brand new episode with you. Man, has the beginning of this month, which is almost over now, gone by so fast. I don't know if anybody else feels like this, but Lucas and I started just celebrating the new year on Lunar New Year because they might have gotten the calendar right. I feel like what happens is you go through all of this chaos and mayhem during December, and then the first of the year comes out of nowhere, but you were so busy with the other things that even if you wanted to do new things at the beginning of the year, let's just say maybe this is the year that you wanted to get into jujitsu, and now you're like, oh my God, or start a gym membership. It is like week 3 or 4, and you are just, it already hit you like a freight train. So I have found that Lunar New Year is my real New Year.
Yeah.
And even when I started taking pictures for this one gym, and they have a bunch of windows. And even tonight when I was taking pictures, it was so much lighter out than it was the last time that I'd been there. And it had been a couple weeks because I was deathly ill last week. That is the only reason that you guys didn't get a podcast from me last week, was because I could not talk. It was the first thing to go was my voice. I got whatever that sinus funk that was going around. Not quite a flu, not a total flu. It was more of a cold. But I lost my voice and just legitimately could not talk. And then I had an audition, and it was very bad. It was so hard to, because it was also one of those networks that like you don't want to be as animated or, you know, doing networky stuff. Sometimes you have like a very specific voice and style. This network is one that's like very natural, which is I try to like speak in a lower register that like I would normally, you know, speak in for that type of stuff, and it was just not there. So it's been I have a podcast where I talk all the time, so you can imagine that me going without a voice for 4 days was torture. So that happened. Lost her voice. We went to Vegas where I got sick. We got to meet 98 Degrees and Chris K from NSYNC. And
he's a really nice guy.
He is. And Lucas was able to talk to everybody, and I was standing in the corner trying not to get anyone sick. So I like went there and did a job. I ended up helping out on the step and repeat photography for it, and stood really far away from everybody, took their pictures, and then continued to stand far away by these shelves. So that way I would also not really get anyone sick. Yeah. And I guess I can kind of hear it in my voice still that it's a little bit not quite normal.
Yep, it takes time to come back.
Yeah, I don't know if it was weird because I wasn't even coughing and it wasn't the nasal drip. It just decided to go. Yeah. And normally those two things are what causes it. So
because you started coughing afterwards.
Yeah, that was the first, like I went to open mat.
I can't remember. Was that before? Was Vegas after it snowed here or before? No, it snowed when we got back.
It snowed both times. It snowed before we went, and then we were like, oh my God, it might snow on Tuesday. And then we came back and it snowed. Yeah. But it was not as great because the city did not shut down. Probably because they're stupid. I don't know. We knew that the snow was coming when we were in Vegas. Yeah. And then even as we were looking at it falling outside and sticking to the ground.
It was early too.
My weather app said 0% chance of precipitation.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then all the cars were sliding all over the road. You could even see it at the end of the road.
That's crazy.
Because there was no real salt. No one had prepared for it. And last time they shut the city down. So this time, like we went outside, and instead of seeing beautiful snow stuck to the ground, the cars had already driven through it. It melted, and then it froze into just sheets of ice. Yep. So we stayed home, but the second time was not as magical as the first time, mostly because everybody went to work that morning, and then 3:00 came and they was like, good luck getting home.
Yeah, that did happen to a lot of people. I think that I left early. I can't remember why. I think
if there's a state of emergency, do not quote me on this. I definitely read this as a comment on Instagram, so this is probably not true. But if there is a state of emergency for a winter storm, supposedly you shouldn't get fired from work.
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer. This information is from a very unverified random comment on Instagram.
What's weird to me is like, why, as an employer, why would you want your workers to risk that? Because if they damage their car, and if their car's busted up and broken because you wanted them to come in for one day, you're not even going to have any customers. Because who's coming in when it's all icy outside? Nobody. So technically, there's no reason to have them come in for work. Unless you do like some weird computer job where you're just like coding. But even then, you can just stay home. It just doesn't make sense to risk the
if you
the
were
customer
at work
or
from
your
like 6
employees.
to 8 a.m., like if I had still had my old job at the doctor's office, I would have been at work.
Yeah.
I would have been at work, and then the snow would have been falling, and then I too would not be able to get up a hill and then be on the internet for everybody to be like, what are these idiots doing driving around, getting home because their work told them to come in that day.
Yeah. I wouldn't
So-
have come in. I would have been like, nah, too much weather sucks.
Snow day was wild. The going to Vegas was super crazy. We got to train while we were there, which was so fun. I always love training when I go places. It's my favorite activity.
Yeah.
So it's one of the best things of jiu-jitsu. If you have not yet embarked on that New Year's resolution to try jiu-jitsu this year, I highly recommend trying it out. I guess if you are searching for a gym, here's some information. I remember when I was looking about getting into jiu-jitsu, and the only information we were going off of was Lucas in the military almost 20 years ago. They were like, jiu-jitsu, you guys should do it. And so that was all we were going off of. So we found a like self-defense focused jiu-jitsu program in the city. It closed weeks after we joined it. This seems to happen to it's just a small business. Gyms close all of the time, and this one closed. And so they lost the space. Basically, the owner had died. This is my understanding of the building, and then the children like raised the rates, and then the gym couldn't afford to be there anymore. So we were at that program. One of the big questions I had is like, what do you wear to like just showing up? And every single of one of these gyms normally says on the website whether you can like rent a gi there. I wouldn't necessarily, because some gyms require a certain kind of gi. I don't know if I would buy a gi and then go to class, only because some gyms are specific about needing their like specific gis. This is a hot, contentious topic. And if you go onto like BJJ, the subreddit, like this is like one of those things that is very hotly debated on whether or not a gym should make you buy their gi or not. But even so, some of them have uniform policies where you can only wear like an IBJJF style gi, which is black, blue, or white specifically.
I don't mind doing that when I'm visiting another place, but for it to be my home gym, I personally prefer a place that lets you wear whatever you want.
Yeah, I get why. Like, I look at it, aesthetically, it looks great. If you're going with the whole idea of like school uniforms as children, it's not distracting. So everybody dresses the same.
Oh, right.
And it's just one of those things where I get it. I will say, no one who has ever made the rule about a mandatory white gi has ever bled 7 days out of a month.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
From an area that would get on your head.
Do not consider women whatsoever.
But that's my one. I think it looks, as a photographer who does photograph gyms with all white gis, best looking thing. Very highly respected gyms in America.
Yeah.
Some of the most like elite children's programs in America, all white gis. And I understand this from a school uniform perspective type of thing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, those days, I'm pretty lazy and don't train on those days anyway. But I think about that in competition specifically, where I'm like, it's not a white gi day for Rachel.
Yeah.
So, so that being said, if you go, you should be able to just go in like kind of like athletic clothing, wear a slightly tighter shirt than loose one, because toes and fingers and stuff get caught. Even though it's crazy to me that like the internationally recognized uniform of wrestlers at practice is loose baggy t-shirts and loose shorts. But I guess they're not doing submissions. But I just think it's interesting that we both do a grappling thing and they wear much looser clothing than I've noticed this. You noticed this with wrestlers who show up to jiu-jitsu class. They're like the ones wearing
a t-shirt.
Yep. Through over a year of white belt in no-gi class. They will not buy a rash guard. It's like a whole thing. So that was something that I was just like, I want to get there and figure the uniform thing out, because there is something about joining a martial art and wearing a weird martial art uniform that is kept me from going to the place to do the thing for a long time. Lucas doesn't worry about this stuff, but I was just like, we got to get there, and we got to get there 15 minutes early, because what if we need a thing? And you do it. And then you'll go. Some places have intro classes. Some places are just like, here, jump into like the basic or fundamentals class. And normally they teach you a technique. If you've ever done dance class, it's like when someone shows you like an 8 count of choreography, they're just like, you put your left hand here and your right hand and you do the thing. And then after that, they do sparring. You don't have to do that when you're brand new. And then you make friends and then find this really fun thing that
just
you
remember
keep
when you start sparring, don't try to impress anybody because you don't really have training. It's okay if you're not good at it. And for the most part, your higher level belt people are going to let you work.
And not only do you not have training, but your instincts are all wrong.
Yeah, all of them are wrong. So
maybe if you're a wrestler, your
wrestlers
instincts
are pretty good. Yeah. But wrestlers, man, they explode so much. Like, just slow down. You exploding on 38-year-old Lucas and doing a double leg and bringing him to the mat. Really, you're not proving anything.
So the thing that I have learned, I have a wrestling coach who actually teaches college level wrestling. I go to a wrestling class, and it teaches like wrestling for the actual sport of wrestling and not jujitsu. Even though there's jujitsu people in the class, and they do techniques that we all benefit from. Yeah. He made a really interesting comment or statement to me the last time that I went in. And he said, in jiu-jitsu, one of the things that you want to be and like work towards is you are more of like it's like safer if you go slower, right? We don't want to be ripping kimuras. We don't want to be throwing arm bars because we don't want to break someone's arm accidentally because that's the style. So you kind of show your maturity from white belt to blue belt if you are pretty good at being a good training partner and you like can flow roll and you kind of know how to like give and take and like kind of like manage your pace and not hyperventilate or spaz or panic or like force things. That's normally like a huge thing that most schools should take into consideration when they give you a blue belt. Because if you're sending blue belts out into the world and they might be cross-training on vacation, like hopefully this person is not still spazzing and like breaking ribs by accident and that kind of thing. Yeah. But he had made the statement that in the art of wrestling, it is safer if you actually go faster and not hesitate because it's clunkier on the way down if you do things slow. Yeah. And I am a big hesitator in a lot of ways, and I try to like walk things down, and you can walk down, like you can like do a single leg and walk them to the ground kind of thing. Right. But there are some things that we've learned, like I think we were working on, I don't even know what they're called. It's like it's very similar to an anaconda motion, but it's a chest wrap. So you wrap their chest, and the way that you get points in freestyling is you like flip them over a bunch of times. So we were doing that. You can't do that slow. They land on you and they sit there. So like you kind of have to do get a little momentum and do it. And that was what he was referring to because we were doing that. And I was going at a pace that was not going to work for that move.
That makes sense, yeah.
And then I like put my head in a better position and got a better angle on it, and it worked even better. But this is something I've been taking into consideration. It's very similar to me in jiu-jitsu. If you are learning an armbar, there is different schools of thought between like flexed feet and pointed toes. So you could flex your feet, that engages all the muscles in your leg. You point your toes. If you like even grab your calf muscle after you point your toes, it's soft. It's not the same as if it's flexed. Yeah. However, it's like if you have pointed toes, they carry your weight and might struggle posturing up. If you flex your feet, it's got more control, but they can posture up. And it's another thing that's very similar to this is dead toes versus live toes. If you sprawl on someone, wrestlers dead toe. So when someone tries to stand up, you actually slide across the floor with them. It's more difficult. If you have live toes, the idea is you can put pressure there, but what they can do is they can like walk you up and to standing because your toes are like stuck to the floor. Yeah. So you kind of just want to know what you need to do and use that information for that instead of it being like a correct way or an incorrect way. And I find that with the explosiveness in wrestling is there are places for that, even in jiu-jitsu, that I'm finding a place that I probably should have been going faster on before. And then there's places like in arm bars where maybe we don't want to throw them and like explode that kind of thing. Yeah. So I have definitely benefited from training with wrestlers and taking some wrestling classes because if anyone's like, this is the only way to do.
I want to do it. I just got to get time.
Yeah. And also it's so scary. I have made this joke before, but when you're older, the floor is further away. Yeah. Like I watch kids do jiu-jitsu and yeah, of course you can do that because like the floor is like 2.5 feet away. Yeah. When you're older, I always thought it was so weird when you would watch. Also,
they're like literally 200 pounds lighter than I am. So like.
Yeah. You're falling with all that pressure on a bone that's really old.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's definitely something that I will say, though, as I do more of it, I feel smoother.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that it's like that thing that high school skateboarders have where they are 40 and they've been doing it nonstop without like weight gain and weight loss and big gaps in between. And if you've just been continuously skateboarding, you don't really lose that balance and skill.
That's also something that people who continue skateboarding are also usually wearing helmets or skating like responsibly. Recovering from injuries puts you out for so long, and that's where you gain the weight. That's where you get like tired and you don't want to go. You lose motivation. So always train as safe as possible and as often as possible, so that way, you keep the athleticism up and you keep it going.
Very true, because I injured my wrist, as everyone knows, in August, and I don't think I've gotten back to my strength and conditioning routine. Yeah. We did leave our strength and conditioning gym because, one, it's far, and we really shouldn't have been going out there ever to begin with, because in the morning it was just we were sitting in 45 minutes back in traffic, and that's just not really sustainable for what we were doing. And Lucas never made it because of work. Mm-hmm. And then two of our favorite trainers left, and then we were like, we're driving really far. And it's fine. Like, it's not bad. It's fine. And so we switched and we haven't even started there. I think Lucas is starting at the strength and conditioning place tomorrow. And I don't even know if it makes sense for me to start tomorrow or like next week anyway, but it's just been a huge transition. It's very difficult to change your routine. Yeah. With that kind of stuff. And I'm like, and then you blink.
We're also at a new gym too, so our new gym is further away.
Or at a new jiu-jitsu gym, technically a couple of them. And
you just got to get that routine going. And once you get used to it, you're just like, oh, no, it's just what I do, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. And
you blink, though, and 16 weeks have gone by, and you're like, am I in shape? I don't know. I've had the opportunity on some of these days to train doubles, and I've learned before to not do that if I do not have strength and conditioning and my nutrition on top of. So we got on top of our nutrition this week. Yep. We are one day into it, and I'm not going to lie, it's pretty miserable. So this is a very controversial opinion, but I hate meal prepping, and it's because all the food, when it's not fresh, just tastes like leftovers, and so some of the flavors not quite the same. It doesn't really taste that great, and then at that point you're like, should I just be doing a lean cuisine? Like, if we're not even enjoying the food, and then we spend all the time to go and get it and make it fresh, and then like stick it in the fridge, but then it's not fresh 4 days later, and it's like now and then I
will say the little breakfast sandwiches we make are good.
Yeah, but I don't even know if most people, if they're on a diet, would not even be doing those. We can do those because you have a very active job, and we are going back into an athletic mode where we do need to fuel our bodies. Mm-hmm. But most people who are like meal prepping are like putting together vegetables that get slimy and like other things. And if that's the thing that you wait to do the day of, then you might as well just make all of the food the day that you're eating it, because that's the part that takes the longest to me, is the chopping of it. Yeah. So, and then I look at the way that meal prep people tend to be, and this is going to be a whole rant, and they like separate, their protein from their vegetables, from their carbs. And when you go to restaurants, like their meals are like more combined. It's not like in these separate, I'm like, there's something about that also feels off to me about your relationship with food. I guess you want to fuel it, but then I'm like, there's something about looking at it that feels a little bit psycho to me.
It's just disappointing.
It's disappointing, and you're miserable. I don't know how many weeks do you think that you would need to get back to where you were, at least world master?
12.
12. Guys, we're going to be so unhappy for 12 weeks. Yeah. I already feel like I forgot how bad this is, because we've already lost so many hours just running to the different grocery stores.
I didn't even finish cleaning the dishes
from last night.
I have to still clean the cast iron pan. I haven't done that yet.
And nothing we've made is like wildly healthy or great. Like,
the tacos were good.
The tacos were good, but then you start to wonder, for 69 cents from Taco Bell.
I know.
And then you're like, what did I do? And I'm like, okay, but that's processed, and this is not technically. Yeah. And you look at it, you're like, but is there really that big of a difference between the process?
Yeah. Because you're like, how many calories was in this of a fucking 200 calorie taco? And then you go to Taco Bell and they're like, it's 180. And you're like,
it's like the breakfast sandwiches are this way too.
I will tell you this: re-microwave Taco Bell isn't that bad.
That's because it was never good to begin with.
Yeah, so it was really pretty similar to when you get it fresh. Unless it's like a Crunchwrap Supreme or something that
It's crunchy.
Yeah, something that's crunchy. Like you can't. I mean, a gordita fucking heats up pretty damn well.
So one of the things that I meal prepped was a wrap from Starbucks. It's their feta, spinach, sun-dried tomato, egg white wrap that they sell. And I found a copycat recipe and I made a bunch of those and stuck half of them in the freezer and then half of them in the fridge. And the reason why I knew that this would be the perfect thing to meal prep is because they're kind of expensive. And you know that ish is going to Starbucks frozen.
Yeah.
And it's going to be no different. So I'm recreating something that was underwhelming to begin with.
Yep.
And it's not disappointing because literally if you buy it from Starbucks, you're not like, oh my God, this is so good. You're like, this is a function and it's fine and it's calorically appropriate and it's giving me the protein that I need and it's giving me the carbs and the other things the fat that I need. And so it is a correct meal and it is just as underwhelming as the original.
It's just a lot of work. So
it's a lot of work for something that I'm not convinced. Again, maybe the solution is to just go spend the $5 at Starbucks because how much was the time worth? I'm just wondering how much we actually saved because sun-dried tomatoes in a jar was like $7.
Yeah.
Because they were out of the ones that I normally pay $3.99 for.
Eggs are $4.
And the eggs were $4. The egg whites were almost $7. $8 for the carton. So I'm like adding everything up and I'm like, and then I wouldn't have had to do it.
Yeah.
So
we would have had to hold 3 hours on Sunday. We didn't have to do that.
Yeah. And then everyone's like, and then people who are like really into it, they're like, all I do is like cook up some ground beef and some potatoes and broccoli. And it looks like a miserable meal that got stuck into the steamer.
I could eat a pound of ground beef and that's it for dinner, just salt and pepper.
Yeah, but we did almost exclusively meat thing with Lucas, and I know there were a lot of other factors, but over that time period, we did not lose weight.
No, we didn't lose weight. I didn't gain any weight, but I didn't lose weight.
Yeah, so I think...
But I'm also not exercising that much, so that's a lot of problem. I have to exercise. I just have to.
Lucas was doing really well when we had our old gym membership, and he was able to go in the morning because he wasn't on a time card situation that he's on now.
Yeah,
so
it's difficult.
That's been pretty bad.
Life is difficult, but it's okay. We're getting back to a decent exercise routine. I'm going tomorrow morning and went to jiu-jitsu tonight. So
I'm glad that you're making it to jiu-jitsu. How many days a week do you want to train in jiu-jitsu?
I want to train every day like we used to.
Yeah.
Like in the evening times, I want to go.
That'll be nice. I'd like that too, I think.
And then I want to go to the gym in the morning and then evening time do jiu-jitsu like we used to.
We will keep you guys updated on how this goes.
Yeah.
That is our Lunar New Year resolutions because we're getting started on this week. If you have not accomplished everything that you've wanted to accomplish at the first of the year, it's not too late. On a different calendar, the start is now.
Yep.
So go out there and have the year that you want on the Asian calendar.